Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Well folks, my homework is finally done. That other blog that I'm going to be uploading today was done about a week ago. It's how busy I've been. I haven't had time to even sit down to even put an audio and video file together into a video editor and hit render, which takes about 5 minutes to do. But all my classes are done. I'll have that free time back and I can hopefully get started on some of my backlog, which includes reviews on the Super Nintendo Mini, and if I have time I want to review the NES Mini since I obtained both of those this year. And I also in this vlog want to talk about why Sony's and Sega's mini consoles flat out failed. Okay, first let's get on with the news. It is unfortunate to hear that Nintendo will probably be discontinuing making the NES Mini and the SNES Mini after the holidays. They probably won't be available anymore. It's kind of a shame. The Super Nintendo Mini, I hear, outsells the PS4. However, Nintendo has another console called the Switch that also outsells the PS4, and I can understand from their point of view why they want to concentrate on Switch manufacturing, because they can make more money from it in the long run, and they can also encourage people to sign up for their classic-esque Netflix online series. They need to put Super Nintendo and N64 games up there, but that's what they're going to be focusing on. If you want one of these, I suggest you try to find one before they go back up to scalper prices on eBay. Anyways, let's talk about the Sony Classic Mini failure and the Sega Genesis failure and why I think those consoles failed. Both consoles were produced to kind of ride the hype train that the Nintendo Mini consoles created, but they failed for one reason. You look at the Nintendo Classics and you just see how well made these mini consoles were. Great emulation, great thought went into their game library. You look at Sega Genesis Classic and you look at what Sony's producing with their PlayStation Classic, and you don't really see any of that. Now, I haven't played either one of these consoles, but I do watch YouTube, I do see videos. Sega, you have to cut a little bit of slack because they're no longer this big titan in the game industry. In fact, they are owned now by a company called Sammy that makes pachinko machines, so they don't have the funds to really create their own hardware. That said, they will go to a company called AtGames, which isn't necessarily known for their high-quality products or their good emulation, and it just shows in that Sega Genesis Classic console. Whenever I see reviews and just see video of that, it's like, oh God, Sega, how could you let them do this to your name? And that console hasn't been on the scalpers market, despite the fact that, hey, you can actually play Sega Genesis carts on it, because, well, no one wants to play crappily emulated Sega Genesis carts. If you want to play a Sega Genesis cartridge on a console that does emulation, you have plenty of options, including the Retron 5, which does a whole lot better than the piece of shit that AtGames produced. And finally, let's talk about the PlayStation Classic, because I've been wanting to talk about this one for a few weeks now. When Sony announced this, I was just a tad bit excited. I was someone who chose the N64 when I was a kid. I didn't get a PlayStation 1 until 2001, and then I got a PS2 in 2002. I do own a few PS1 games, but there's plenty in that catalog that I've never played before. Emulated well, given to me at a good price tag, I'm interested. Well, I went and I saw what their lineup was going to be, and it's like, Sony, there's only like 3 games that I know of that people talk about. One I've played, in fact, it's basically on every console now, and that's Final Fantasy VII. Great game, but where's some of the other games you could provide? When people talk about PlayStation, they talk about Crash Bandicoot, they talk about Spyro, they talk about Tomb Raider, they talk about Castlevania Symphony of the Night, they talk about Mega Man Legends, they talk about the Mega Man X games. You know, it's like you went and gave zero thoughts on how to get these games licensed, how to make sure they're put on there and emulated well. you have Super Puzzle Fighter, for example, from Capcom. That is a decent game, you know, put that down towards the bottom of the list after you acquired the rights of either Mega Man X4, Mega Man Legends, or a Street Fighter game. But you have none of that. You see, one of the reasons why I said the N64 Mini wouldn't be good is because all these games went towards the PlayStation after the Super Nintendo. Sony didn't bother to put any of these game series into their classic collections, and that, I think, was a huge screw-up. Then the emulation, just watching the videos, it's not AtGames quality, thank God, but it's not really good, with people proving that the Super Nintendo Mini can actually run a lot of these PlayStation games better than Sony's own console, and that's mainly because they used an open source emulator. And if you kids don't know what an open source emulator is, it basically means it's a free emulator you can download off the internet. And then to show their laziness, to show that they weren't really interested in making a good product, just making a lot of quick cash, they put the PAL games into the PS1 Classic. And when I heard they were putting PAL games, it's like, yeah, I might get it when I see it on the Must Go Now clearance sale, because it's been collecting dust for 6 months on shelves for like $10, because that's what Sony's giving me. Open source emulator, crappy selection of games, and then PAL for a lot of them. I might pick them up if they have PAL games. And for those who don't understand what that means, well, NTSC TVs that we use in North America and PAL, which they use in Europe, operate different frequencies. And when you try to play a game that's on a PAL frequency on a North American TV set, interesting things can happen. They're not unplayable by any means, but you'll have sound problems, you'll have frame rate issues. It's a goddamn mess. And Sony is like, we're happy putting these PAL games into this system we want to spend $100 on. And to my not so great surprise, I actually seen several of them in a GameStop I've been to. In fact, I've been to 2 or 3 GameStops in the last few weeks, just Christmas shopping, and I've seen these things around. They're not going to sell well, Sony. Go back to the drawing board, maybe creating Mini 2. That's one advantage you had, is you had such a huge library, none of them necessarily first party, that you could actually create 2 or 3 of these things. Create your own emulator, make it a good emulator, make sure that the game library can stand and hold water, that's actually worth me wanting to spend money on, and make sure that they're coded for the right areas. In the meantime, do I think the mini console fad is over? Yeah, kind of. It's not that people don't want classic collections, don't want to see these games again, don't want to see these games preserved, aren't nostalgic for them, because, again, the Nintendo Minis are still selling well. It's just that Nintendo wants to focus on the Switch, and to get people to buy these games on the Switch, it's more profitable for them. But a lot of people who just slapped these together and expected them to sell because they had Sega or Sony's name on it aren't. And unless people in the future want to build really great mini consoles that are worth $100, yeah, I don't see it continuing. I really don't. It's kind of a shame. In the meantime, like I said, if you haven't gotten a Nintendo Mini or a Super Nintendo Mini, I suggest you run out and find one before they start going up again on eBay for $300 to $400. This is Tommy the Game Master signing out and thanking you for listening.